Welcome to Las Películas Sábados Gigantes at the Cinemarijuana Theatre for a special edition, a special Black History Month edition of the podcast. We're scaled down tonight.
More intimate experience.
Just a couple of us here to talk, but for Black History Month to celebrate, we decided to watch a series of films that are sort of by or about black people and or black culture, and talk about them.
Yeah,
so
like we do.
So we are here tonight to discuss from 1935 the film Sanders of the River, starring Paul Robeson, directed by Zoltan Korda, correct?
Correct.
All right, why don't you give us a synopsis on this?
All right, well, basically this is set in Africa during British colonial rule.
Nigeria, to be specific.
Yes, correct. And so this guy Sanders is he's the
Colonel?
Colonel, yeah, Colonel Sanders. He's no chicken, but he is the commissioner of the local area. So basically he is the head white guy in charge. He's there under British rule. All the chiefs have to report to him. And so he's basically keeping peace amongst the tribes, trying to keep the warlike nature of these people under control, and the concept of white man's burden, I guess. And so in this one, Paul Robeson plays Bosambo, who is the leader of one of the tribes, who ends up becoming buddies with Sanders. And at some point, Sanders is called back to England.
Sandy, as they call him.
Yeah, or Lord Sandy. And he has to. Yes. And as soon as he leaves, the shit hits the fan, and war comes back thanks to a couple of just dastardly gun runners who spread false rumors about the death of Lord Sandy. And the big chief, the head king, tries to kidnap Bosambo's wife.
Yes, his queen.
And and then some people got to regulate.
All right. There we go. From 1935. This film is also part of the Criterion box set Portrait of an Artist, Paul Robeson.
We spoke previously about our first foray into Paul Robeson.
Yeah, so if you actually want the history on Paul Robeson, we gave you a little taste on the last podcast that we did for the Emperor Jones. So you can check back to that. Listen to that one if you want to. If you want the history or a little bit of the history of Paul Robeson. So anyways, all right, well, let's just get right into 3 minutes, 3 words for this fucking thing then. Yeah, shall we?
Oh, we need to introduce ourselves,
too.
Oh,
that's right. Man, silly me. All right, clockwise starting with me, I'm Ed.
I'm John.
And that's it.
Yeah, that's up. Well,
excellent. All right. We'll do 3 minutes, 3 words.
Go to it.
All right. Okay, so this movie, I guess, reading the wiki about it afterwards, was critically successful as well as financially successful. It was a big deal at the time, or not a big deal, but it did well. Was disowned later on by Paul Robeson. He took the part. They made it when he was living in London, and it's interesting in contrast because the last film we watched was American, made outside the Hollywood system. This was made in England. He thought he was doing native African people a favor because he was going to try to portray them accurately and with dignity, and he wanted it to be sort of a thing black people could look at as a positive symbol for their heritage. But apparently, towards the end of the shoot and in editing, they shoehorned in a plot that basically this film turns into just a giant celebration of white imperialism.
They kind of tricked him, yeah. They sort of... He thought he was shooting one movie, and then it turned out they were shooting a very different type of movie. Yeah,
and he since disowned it. He said he hates the film. There's actually a really rad quote on the wiki. I don't know if you could find that, but I thought this film was kind of a piece of shit, to be honest with you. I guess I kind of understand why. I guess I kind of understand why the critics might have liked it at the time, especially if a lot of people hadn't had a look at the African continent and stuff that was going on there, because they sent a crew out for 4 months, and they filmed a bunch of like native tribes and their native ceremonies and stuff like that. So in a lot of ways, it is kind of interesting because you do get a really cool kind of look at some of the tribal stuff in Africa where they were shooting. But the film, forget the racist, thank goodness for our white, fucking overlords message. And Sanders is played by Leslie Banks, who's a rad actor.
Oh, he's great, yeah.
By the way. And Robeson, no, this film is bad, no fault of his. But the film is just disjointed. It's like the narrative seems like there's really weak glue that strings together a handful of shitty fucking musical numbers, and then all the stock footage, basically. They shot all the B-roll they basically shot in Africa. And it's really fucking weak, and the film plods along, and it's not... The musical numbers just feel forced and weird, and there's not like enough of them to make it a musical, but there's too many of them to make it
not be a musical.
To make it not odd that that these songs are in there. If I said that properly. And then we just cut to here's, helicopter or plane footage of, us making fucking wildlife run away for 10 fucking minutes.
Here's birds and bison.
And then here's a really unnecessary fucking song. Because Paul Robeson sings good, and then racist.
Yeah, there's also the whole racist thing too.
It totally kind of sucks. Anyways,
yeah,
and then is racist. I don't understand. Ultimately, it's racist, or the message is, by today's standards, absolutely, questionable morally, or philosophically, and. Yeah, so I don't know.
3 words.
What the fuck? I guess
I think that kind of fits.
Yeah, because okay, what the fuck critics? What the fuck Cordas?
Yeah, it's interesting to see how.
Okay.
Or maybe, once again, a product of that era, I guess.
The only one I get is Robeson. I get it if you guys are like, oh, no, we wanted to make a movie about how rad white folks are and how much, black savages need us.
That's pretty much...
if that's...
That's pretty much they come out
You know what
say.
I mean? If your goal was to make Sirac the Preparer cry, mission accomplished. All right.
It's true.
Your
Very
turn.
True.
Go ahead. Take it away.
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, basically you summed it up. It's almost like they only made half of a movie here. Because, yeah, I get... And obviously, if it's 1935, it's not like you don't get Zoo News. You can't just go to YouTube and type in giraffes and see some cool footage. So I could see for the public at large, maybe just seeing this footage of hippos running across the plains of the Serengeti could have sort of been worth the price of admission. But watching it now, it really feels weird because, okay, it technically isn't stock footage because they shot it for this movie.
It just feels like they're terrorizing these poor animals.
Well, right, just scaring them with their flying machines, and they just film it and they just stick it in the movie. And and I agree with the musicals. Except for the songs are. I actually kind of like some of the songs. A couple are pretty good.
Yeah, there was the one. What's the name of the actress that played his wife?
Oh, let me see.
She had. The one where she gets captured.
Nina Mae McKinney.
Yes.
As Lilongo.
Yeah.
Lilongo.
Yeah, I thought in particular her song was cool.
Her song was good. I liked the little war song that they did when they were kind of when he was rallying his troops. Yeah. And the one when the boats were going on the river. But I like the songs. But then it's weird because, you've got 3 solid musical numbers in a movie that is not really a musical at all. And I'll get to this a little bit when we kind of get into dank nugs, but there's definitely a heavy imperialist message where it really is it's best for white people to come in and take control. On the plus,
right at the beginning, it's this is dedicated to the great white man who
who did this stuff. Fortunately, it's Sanders is a good guy, but it's still. A good jailer is still a jailer, a nice oppressor is still an oppressor. There's no reason why the British needed to be there imposing their imperial rule over these people, talking about how the King of England is the greatest king in the world and he's got to call the shots over here. And they conquered most of the free world at one point because that was just what they thought they could do. And they had the ships and they had the manpower somehow and they did it. But watching it now, you can't really feel like these are the good guys. You can't really. It's just weird because you've got some great performances. The cast does a great job. It is interesting.
Actually, the chief.
The evil king. Let's see.
I thought he was really good too.
Yeah, really. Honestly, you can't fault the acting at all. The fact that it's half stock footage. It was
It's
Toto
just they
Ware as King Mofalaba.
Okay, yeah, they just didn't really have much of a fucking movie.
They only really had half a movie, and they just stuck a bunch of stock footage into it, and it's really racist. But I mean, from as a little slice of historical cinema, it's interesting to watch, and I mean, there's some good things in there.
Without the N-bombs, though.
Right.
Time.
Well, that's interesting too.
More racist
oddly
somehow, more racist than the Emperor Jones, yet far less use of the word.
Yeah,
that's funny.
My 3 words, I think, are how I felt: much too long.
Oh God, yeah.
Because it was like a solid hour and a half, but they really only had at maximum 45 minutes of movie.
Dude, yeah, but
tops.
You're like, come on.
It really
man.
this because sometimes old time movies are like 90, like no, not 90, but like an hour, 70 minutes, something like this.
Yeah.
This should have been 60, 70 minutes.
I will say there is value in this film. Actually, why don't you go ahead and just give us the dank nugs on this? And then
let me go ahead, because just back what you were talking about. Okay, so Paul Robeson disowned the film. So, after the filming, Paul Robeson was asked back to the studio to take some of the scenes. He discovered that the film's message had been drastically changed during editing because it justified imperialism. The finished film was actually dedicated, and I'm quoting here, to the handful of white men whose everyday work is an unsung saga of courage and efficiency.
That's what it says right at the beginning.
Right
of the
at
film,
the beginning.
and you're like, oh shit.
Yeah, and so
okay, here we go.
And he tried to portray, like you said, African chiefs as realistic and heroic, but he found that Mosamba was changed from Nigerian leader to a servile lackey of British colonial rule. He was furious, and now here's the quote from Robeson himself. The imperialist plot had been placed in the plot during the last 5 days of shooting. I was roped into the picture because I wanted to portray the culture of the African people, and I committed a faux pas, which convinced me that I had failed to weigh the problems of 150,000 native Africans. I hate the picture.
Yeah, there's the quote. Yeah,
and it's very understandable. He also said it's the only film of mine that can be shown in Italy or Germany, for it shows the Negro as fascist states desire him, savage and childish.
Yeah.
So I mean, basically, it had the Nazi and the fascist thumbs up.
Sure.
As a good cinema, and then what does that tell
you? Absolutely. So yeah. All right. Well, I think the merit in this film is, first, as a reflection of those attitudes, I think it's important that we have art left, that we have art that remains to remind us, like, no, that's fucking. You just read that.
Well,
that's real.
That's
fucking totally real.
Those who forget history are doomed to repeat it, and it's important to remember this stuff happened. It's like when they say a little blurb above, like before the Looney Tunes DVDs, like the racist old cartoons, like to not acknowledge this stuff is to act like it never happened.
Right.
And if you're going to be a student of cinema, especially
or history
or Black history, seeing a film like this and knowing the story behind it it's very educational.
Yeah, totally. Also, I think this film is valuable as a contrast, both in terms of the work of Paul Robeson, but also in terms of just kind of, different kind of messages. Watching this, because there's at least one other one available on Hulu, but we decided we'd watch because we read a little bit about this one.
Well, and it's funny because it was almost like sort of going for a good one and a bad one, because
Emperor Jones was so celebrated, sort of, and he was so kind of proud of it,
right? And then this one is obviously
and it was so groundbreaking,
right?
Sort of, and
this one's so almost backwards for its era, especially let alone these days.
Yeah. So I think it's kind of like how, the Sid Sheinberg cut of Brazil. Yes, it's terrible, but I think it's important that we hang on to that, and that for true fans of cinema or Gilliam or that film, that they have that to see what happens when
the studio screws things up.
When the shareholders are the ones calling the shots. Yeah. So I think that there is value in this film for that reason, and the saddest portrait of an artist, so you got to take the good and the bad,
right? And it's interesting as a retrospective, and I can't really recommend the set enough. Like I can't recommend anything Criterion does in their collection enough. It's great stuff. But yeah, it's. You got to take the good with the bad, especially if you really want to, not just go to the movies, but do like what we do at the Cinemarijuana Theatre and really delve deep into cinema and appreciate it in all its facets. And these things stand as visual time capsules to an era, whether
It's the closest thing we have to a time machine.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. All right. What else should we talk about with this fucking movie?
Man, it's tough to say. I mean,
Because it just wasn't very good.
Well, I know, and it's funny. It's there's no. Whereas in The Emperor Jones, there was an ambiguity to the morality.
Yeah. Should we? Yeah. Let's discuss imperialism.
Right.
Like, how rad is it?
Yeah.
I mean,
Who's going to take the pro imperialism side?
Well, okay.
in this debate?
Although honestly, at one point, I did think of the. We did talk about the conversation that they have in Monty Python's Life of Brian about. What have the Romans ever done for us? It's
right.
Like, well, the aqueducts, you know, public safety, the roads, medicine, like
brought peace.
Yeah,
Shut up.
Right. And now I'm not trying to vindicate our Caucasian overlords in this film because the only thing they really did was bring war and then peace.
Well, and it's funny, and I got a feel on some level like that was probably whitewashed because, like, in the movie, Sanders is very benevolent.
Yeah,
and even though it's completely imperialist control these people, he's doing good things. And I gotta believe in the real situations there was a lot more raping of the land.
Yeah.
I didn't see anybody getting taxed. I mean, he talks about the taxes. They briefly mentioned at the beginning that he visits at tax time.
Yeah.
Now that's glossed over, but we don't see maybe how hard it was on the tribes to produce the taxes.
Right.
And then you've got England coming in, taking their slice from these people, these indigenous people that
like what?
Yeah,
taxes? Are you
right.
fucking
That's
kidding
exactly.
me?
So it's even in the concept of what they show in the movie, there's still even the bad stuff is still whitewashed because they're making it seem not as bad as it really was.
Well, yeah,
and it still seems bad, but that means it was
No,
much
that's
worse in
it.
real life.
But for some reason, I did consider let's pretend for a minute they actually did really benefit these people somehow. Like I just wondered if anybody ever did have that. We wondered if anybody ever actually had to have that argument with themselves, like we should be able to govern ourselves, but they do good stuff.
Well, okay,
but we should do it for ourselves.
There's that one island, right? There's some island like in the Pacific that we went and we set up shop there during World War II, right?
Yeah.
And now that we've left, the indigenous people there actually build like wicker airplanes and set up their own airfields because they thought that we were gods, and they're trying to get us to come back.
Wow.
Because they thought it was great. They loved us being there. We had like Twinkies and Coca-Cola. And
we brought them diabetes.
We had basketballs and
we brought them booze.
And so they at least those people can't wait for us to come back.
Yeah.
And so I mean, there's got to be at least. But man,
but I guess you haven't really ever had that. I mean,
it's kind of like taking an animal and putting it let's say you get like a mouse, right? And you put it in like a terrarium. You keep it as a pet. Now, okay, if it was out in the wild, it's going to be somebody's lunch. Probably within 24 hours, it's dead. And you give it this nice, great, peaceful life, but then it's also, you're capturing it. Or like in Pokemon, right? Sure, Ash loves Pikachu, but they're cockfights.
He's
the benevolent
slave master.
Right.
It's the Song of the South thing. It's the idyllic master-slave.
And
it's the Bible.
There's very few black and white, no pun intended again, kind of rules of morality, but it's I think that's almost a catch-22. There's no such thing as benevolent oppression.
Yeah.
No matter how nice you might be to your slaves, if you own slaves, you're in the wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
100%.
You treat your slaves great.
Yeah, but no matter how good you are, it's always a negative. It's the same thing with this. People have to be free as a people to make their own mistakes.
Yeah.
And in theory, okay, there was nobody telling the British what to do when they were druids doing their thing, and look how far they went.
Yeah.
So you've got to let people do their own thing.
Absolutely.
And you got to whether they're gonna succeed or fail, they got to do it on their own.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess this movie is like Birth of a Nation kind of, isn't it? It's
that did pop into my head when watching it. There's sort of I kind of felt the same sort of parallels in that sense.
Although I've heard people say that Griffith wasn't racist, and but then he went and made Intolerance to prove to the world hey, you thought I was racist because of that Birth of a Nation thing? No.
Where do you see this?
But I can't help when I've seen Birth of a Nation be dude.
It just so racist. It's the most racist thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's nuts. Maybe important, maybe decent viewing for Black History Month. I don't know, because it does.
It's almost like the kind of movie that you can't watch it to enjoy. You almost have to just watch it for study.
I guess it depends on what kind of Black History Month you want to have.
Yeah.
Like, what do you want to celebrate? Do you want to look back at like obstacles that have been overcome, or do you want to concentrate on the victories?
Do you want to accentuate the positive?
You right, or look back at the hardships? Kind of like, I don't know. It's a tough call. I would certainly, if you want to look at the hardships, I definitely I would check this one out.
Yes,
for
especially
sure.
cinematic hardships.
Yeah, or both of them.
Yeah.
They're both pretty rad. So. All right, well, that'll wrap it up, yeah?
Yeah, I think that's probably pretty much good.
That'll wrap it up for this edition, and also that'll wrap it up for us with Paul Robeson. We won't be checking out any more of his films for these Black History Month podcasts, but we've got some good stuff coming down the pipe. I won't spoil it yet because we don't know what order we're going to watch it in.
Right, but we're definitely going to try to hit up some well-known important creators, and then also different eras of film. I mean, obviously, we're in the 30s with these two movies. We're going to move out to other eras of black filmmaking.
Look at some pivotal stuff and some interesting stuff. So stay tuned for that.
So
and
keep checking back all February, all month long.
Also, we'll be starting our new round of Cinema Under Glass. Animal Antagonist.
Can't wait to see Man versus Nature, or Nature versus Nature.
Yeah, if you like this, we got a lot of shit in this pipe.
Yeah, tastefully put.
Yeah, thank you.
So check us out. Follow us on SoundCloud. Like us on YouTube. Like us on Facebook.
Yeah, YouTube, Toothless Richard Productions, the Cinemarijuana Theatre on SoundCloud.
Check out our other podcasts.
Yeah, all right. So until next time, I'm Ed.
And I'm John.
This has been Las Películas Sábados Gigantes at the Cinemarijuana Theatre. We'll be back next time. Thanks for listening.
Good night.